One-Way Ticket by John Martin. March 1916. At the Blessington end of the village, Tom Byrne hefted the cart from the ass's back and upended it onto its rear shafts. He tied the animal to the stump of a whitethorn bush, took a jute bag from where it had been tied, and shook out a handful of dry hay. Bridie, his mother, was gone, seeking out the eggman from Baltinglass with his canvas bag of jingling coins. Donard's single street was awash with liquid cow manure and animal urine, the acrid smell mingling with the whiff of turf smoke from the low cottages. Rangy mountain farmers mingled and jostled with hard-faced cattle jobbers. The talk was of the war. There were rumours of a big push that would bring an end to the fighting, and speculation was rife as to the effect that this would have on the price of cattle. The sound of raucous male voices drew Tom towards Doran's pub. He blinked as he entered. A fog of pipe smoke hovered under the exposed blackened rafters. Jimmy Rafferty, resplendent in his red tunic, was perched on a high stool at the end of the counter. Man alive, I didn't know myself since I listed. There I was, the arse out of me trousers, propping up Walsh's corner below, and not two halfpennies to rub on a tombstone. And look at me now. A murmur of admiration was allowed to circulate among the knot of men as Rafferty paused to take a draught from the glass at his elbow. Wiping the froth from his mouth, he looked the hunchbacked Mickey Burke straight in the eye. Burke revelled in the unaccustomed attention. "Did I tell you about the women at all?" "Oh, you did surely." The lone blackened tooth in the front of Mickey Burke's mouth wobbled as a sly smile split his face. A ferreting tongue flicked over his lips, and globs of spittle decorated the front of his stained coat. "But sure you can tell us again." "Well, let me inform you that there never was the likes of them French women. Sallow skin they have, like Protestants, with long black hair. Mad for it they are. And you know what they wear under their skirts?" "Go on, tell us." A splatter of mucus spurted with Mickey's words. Rafferty was in his element. He milked the moment. "I'll tell you what they wear." He paused for the effect to register. "Nothing." He pulled Tom to one side and whispered in his ear, "You could do worse than pay a visit to the recruiting sergeant below in Kelly's Yard. Get on that boat to France. You'll have a rattle in your pocket, cheap drink, and any amount of loose women." A nudge in Tom's ribs, and Rafferty was gone. 5 minutes later, Tom tapped on the half-open door of the commandeered outhouse in Kelly's Yard. "Come on in," a voice boomed from the semi-darkness. Tom entered the room. It had been recently used as a henhouse, and the odour of chicken manure still tempered the air. A blanket-covered table was arranged opposite the door. Behind the table, a large Union flag was pinned to the wall. 2 men in uniform sat, nursing steaming tin mugs. The taller one spoke. "Come on in, young fella." Tom pulled off his cap. He advanced a half-step towards the table. "I was looking for the recruiting." The tall one laughed. "Well, you've come to the right place then, me boy. Hasn't he, Corporal Jenkins?" Jenkins smiled and gestured to Tom to come further into the room. Tom shuffled forward. Corporal Jenkins rose and produced a chair from a darkened corner. He indicated to Tom to sit. The tall man spoke again. "No need to be nervous, son. I'm Sergeant Trotter, and this here is Corporal Jenkins." The sergeant rose and extended his hand. Tom winced at the strength of the grip. "Sit down, for God's sake. We don't stand on ceremony, do we, Corporal Jenkins?" The corporal smiled. The sergeant opened the ledger and took a pencil from behind his right ear. He licked the tip of the pencil. "Well then, what's your name, lad?" "Tom Byrne from above in Bully Beg." "So, young Byrne, you wants to serve your king and country?" "I suppose I do." Tom was aware of the quaver in his voice. "I want to join the army, to go to France." "A strapping lad like yourself will make a fine soldier, I'll warrant. Corporal Jenkins, a mug of your best cha for this young man." Corporal Jenkins lifted the kettle and poured a jet of hot brown liquid into a battered tin mug and placed it on the table in front of Tom. Tom drank deeply. The tea was heavy with sugar. Sergeant Trotter looked up. "What's this you said your name was?" "Byrne, sir. Thomas Byrne." "And what age are you, Byrne?" "I was 17 on the 8th of January just past." The pencil remained poised over the blank page. The sergeant exchanged a meaningful glance with Corporal Jenkins. "Oh, dearie me. I think we have a little problem here, Corporal. 17, eh?" Tom had finished the tea, but still chewed on the wad of tea leaves that came with the last mouthful. Sergeant Trotter broke the silence. "According to King's regulations, the age for enlistment is 18. 18. Oh, however, if you were to go for a little stroll for a few minutes and then come back, we could see what could be done. Do you get my drift, Byrne?" Tom felt his heart pounding. He wasn't sure what the sergeant meant. He was ready to sign up, but if he was the best part of a year under age, then the prospect of escaping from Bully Beg was receding. In a year's time, the war would be over. They wouldn't be looking for soldiers. He had to speak. "The way it is, sir, I didn't know about the age, but I want to go to France. I could do the job. I'm not afraid of hard work." Sergeant Trotter assumed a look of patient concern. He spoke slowly, as if to a child. "If you comes in here and tells me that you are 17, then I can't sign you up. It's agin regulations. But if a lad was to come in and tell me that he was 18, then that would be a different matter." The realization of what the sergeant was hinting at began to dawn on Tom. Maybe there was a way out. All he had to do was to play the game right. "Right so," the sergeant waved his hand in dismissal. "Off you go, and come back in 10 minutes or so. And remember, Byrne, 18. The age is 18. The wink that accompanied the words spoke volumes. Tom headed back out into the hubbub of the fair. As he left Kelly's yard, he was almost pushed aside by a torrent of children spilling towards the village square. Their bare feet splashed in the odorous liquid that covered the streets. Some of the boys had fashioned paper hats in military style and armed themselves with rough-cut wooden swords. The band! The band!" the shrill voices rose in excitement. Tom followed the children, and as they approached the square, he became aware of a distant rhythmic thudding. The sounds of the bass drum drew nearer, and as the crowd parted, the band rounded the corner from the Glen Road. The silver instruments gleamed in the weak sunlight. The white cross straps stood out in contrast to the scarlet tunics. The drum major strutted in front, his long staff setting and controlling the tempo. The band crashed to a halt in the space that had been cleared in the middle of the square. They struck up "Soldiers of the King," and a cheer went up as the tune was recognized. Tom felt a stirring that he'd never experienced before. The music moved through him. The bearing of the bandsmen, the precision of the drill, the sense of togetherness sent out a call he felt impelled to answer. Any doubts he harbored about returning to Kelly's yard evaporated. He turned and ran until he stood again in the yard. This time there would be no mistake. Sergeant Trotter looked up as he entered. Well now, another customer, Corporal Jenkins. Tom sat as before. The sergeant's pencil busies itself with recording the details. Then the crucial question. How old are you? 18 since the 8th of January. Sergeant Trotter noted the information with great care. He looked up and caught the eye of Corporal Jenkins, who was busy filling one of the storm lanterns with paraffin. I'll warrant it must be the Wicklow air that makes these lads grow so quick, Corporal Jenkins. The two men laughed. When the sergeant finished, he replaced the pencil in its resting place, behind his right ear. He extracted a slip of yellow paper from a buff-coloured envelope and handed it to Tom. There you are, Byrne. That's a chit for the train from Dunlavin to Naas. Go home now and make whatever arrangements are needed. Be on the 10 o'clock train on Friday morning and report to the barracks before 5. The sun had warmed when Tom emerged back into the street. He had arranged to meet Bridie at the cart at 5 o'clock. That would be the hard part, breaking the news to her. He'd wait until they were home, and then he'd tell her. The weekly allocation from his soldiers' pay that would provide herself with a regular income to add to the egg money would soften the blow. He had 2 days. He'd drop over to see Willie Drummond tomorrow and arrange for him to keep an eye to things. And then he'd be off, away from Booleybeg to seek the adventure and fortune that the war promised. He allowed himself the pleasure of the thought. He felt again for the reassurance of the scrap of paper in his pocket.